Now Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord granted his plea, and Rebekah his wife conceived. But the children struggled together within her, and she said, If all is well, why am I like this? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, 2 peoples shall be separated from your body. 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. So when her days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed there were twins in her womb. My name's Arthur. Thank you for joining me as we continue our reading in Genesis chapter 25. Moving on from the story of Abraham, we come to the story of his son Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, a cousin. The God of Israel is called the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because all 3 of these men had a personal encounter with God and a vision of God and received the promise of a seed, and that made a distinction between them and their brothers. So Abraham had brothers Nahor and Haran, but it was Abraham that God spoke to and called to the land of Israel. Abraham, as we saw, had 8 sons. Isaac was the second born. Ishmael was the first. But it was to Isaac that God made the promise that the seed would be born. And now we come to the story of Isaac and find he also has 2 sons, and God chooses between them and declares the future before it happens when Rebekah inquires of him concerning them. Let's read the whole passage. Genesis 25, verse 19. This is the genealogy of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah his wife, the daughter of Bethuel the Syrian of Paddan Aram, the sister of Laban the Syrian. Now Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife, because she was barren, and the Lord granted his plea, and Rebekah his wife conceived. But the children struggled together within her, and she said, If all is well, why am I like this? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, 2 peoples shall be separated from your body. 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. So when her days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over, so they called him Esau. Afterward his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. So the boys grew, and Esau was a skilful hunter, a man of the field. But Jacob was a mild man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau, because he ate of his game. But Rebekah loved Jacob. Now Jacob cooked a stew, and Esau came in from the field, and he was weary. And Esau said to Jacob, Please feed me with the same red stew, for I am weary. Therefore his name was also called Edom. But Jacob said, Sell me your birthright as of this day. And Esau said, Look, I am about to die, so what is this birthright to me? Then Jacob said, Swear to me as of this day. So he swore to him, and sold his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob gave Esau bread and stew of lentils. Then he ate and drank, and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. May the Lord bless these words to us. So Isaac knew the time that his father had had to wait for his own birth. And now he finds he has to wait a long time. Why is it that Rebekah doesn't have a child? Why do they live together for 20 years with no child? She'll end up in the same position as his mother was, too old to bear children. This becomes a concern to them, and so he pleads with the Lord. When we have a desire, even if it is a desire that is in line with God's will, we still need to bring it to the Lord. The son that he was to have, Isaac believed that God had a plan, and he was dedicating this plan to God, and he does that by prayer. And so it is not wrong to plead with the Lord, to bring a cause that we have, particularly when we understand that it is part of God's will. And God answered his plea. God granted his plea. Rebecca conceived. Before the days of ultrasound, she couldn't understand what was happening. This having a baby thing was suddenly very, very uncomfortable for her. And so we find that she also is a person of faith. She inquires of the Lord. She goes and prays about the uncomfortable situation she's in. And she also receives a word from the Lord, that there are two nations in her womb. One shall be stronger than the other. They have been struggling in her womb, and they will struggle throughout history. And so it has been that Jacob, who was later renamed Israel, has been in conflict with Edom, which is Esau's descendants. Esau was born first. They were not identical twins. They were very different looking twins. He was like a hairy garment all over, and very red. And so they called him Hairy, for that's what Esau means. But he also got the name Red, for that's what Edom means. And then Jacob came clasping his brother's heel, and so they called him Jacob, which means supplanter, the one who takes the place of. And so Jacob would desire to have the position that Esau had. The boys grew up very differently as well. Esau was a man of the field. He was a skillful hunter, whereas Jacob was a bookish man, a mild man, dwelling in tents. But his ambition was to take the place of his brother, while Esau lived for the present. The difference between them drove a wedge between Isaac and Rebekah. For Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Did Rebekah love Jacob because of the prophecy that had been given? The older shall serve the younger? Maybe it was not as philosophical as that. Simply, Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Jacob was around the house more, and Rebekah appreciated that. So Jacob was a cook. One day when Esau came home, he hadn't been successful in his hunting, he was weary, and so he asked for some of the red stew, lentil stew, that Jacob had prepared. But Jacob had a vision, and so he said, "Sell me your birthright. By rights, you were born a few minutes before me, so you have the right to Dad's estate. You have the right to the lion's share of the future. But sell that to me. If you're hungry, swear it to me, and I'll give you some food. Otherwise, go and get your own food." And Esau could not be bothered getting his own food at this parent time. He says he was about to die, and what good is the birthright to me? Well, it would seem that he wasn't really at death's door. Indeed, he was just too lazy to go and prepare his own food. And so he swore. He made an oath to his brother Jacob, never expecting anything to come of it, because surely his father would give it to him anyway. His father loved him. He was safe. He could say whatever he liked to Jacob, it wouldn't matter. And so Esau despised his birthright and ate the stew that Jacob offered. I take it the prophecy that Rebekah received concerning these two brothers was based on God's foreknowledge. It's a statement, one people shall be stronger than the other. The descendants of Esau have been very strong through history. Herod came from Edom, but the older shall serve the younger. Jesus arose from Jacob.